Welcome back to Michiana Main Lines. Today we're going to be doing a short video on the St. Mary's Railroad. We did a video on the Notre Dame and Western, and this is kind of a little bit of a carbon copy of that. So let's get started here and take a look. First of all, some of the history on the St. Mary's Railroad. Received coal by rail for the campus electric power generation, much like Notre Dame did. For a large complex such as St. Mary's and even Notre Dame, there was tremendous savings to be had in generating your own electric power. The St. Mary's Railroad or spur was last served by Conrail into the 90s, and then coal was phased out in favor of gas, again much like the history of the Notre Dame and Western and the Notre Dame power plant. The spur was removed in the early 2000s, and all the Conrail track in the area, the South Bend Secondary, was removed in the 2010s. We did find out that the engine ended up safe at the Alden Depot Park and Museum, and we'll see a little bit more of that later. There was various rumors going around of it being scrapped and being bought by a private individual, but we did finally find it there. So let's get into it. Looking once again in our familiar South Bend area map, here we have the east-west Norfolk Southern Main Line, which used to be Conrail, the north-south line that ran from South Bend to Niles, the South Bend Secondary, and the MC Connector, this portion here. We also had the line down to Niles Avenue in South Bend. And then here in the red, we had the Notre Dame and Western to the right, and this little kind of question mark you see here over to the left, that was the St. Mary's Spur, which went into their power plant area. Looking at a little bit of an exploded view of that, again we have the north-south line, and then here's the line coming into St. Mary's power plant with a double track. The trusty Conrail ZTS map shows this in much greater detail. Again, north-south line, Indiana Toll Road entrance ramp, and then here we have the St. Mary's Spur. You see where that kind of curved around here near the toll road ramp, the Conrail owned portion, and then the private St. Mary's track in the power plant area, showing a double track here with a switch on each end. Looking at a kind of a current overview of this over here now. Again, north-south line, and here in the dashed line was where the spur came around and into the power plant. This area has changed greatly here, as we'll see later. This now is the Hilton Garden Inn and the Gillespie Conference Center, and the line actually went through the parking lot now is what kind of used to be part of the grade, and then that came around north of the soccer fields and then into the power plant area with the municipal buildings located here in this area. Looking here at an old black and white satellite view, I believe this was sometime in the late 80s. You can see very well the track coming into St. Mary's shows up very well here, almost as a pathway coming up north and then looping around and then getting into the power plant area here. Here was a shot from probably the late 80s. This was Brother Andre Drive. At that time, I don't think it was called Brother Andre Drive. I think it was kind of more or less an extension of Douglas Road, but it's Brother Andre Drive now. This would have been just south of the St. Mary's switch, and this was a Conrail local that was pulling some empties out of St. Mary's. It just pulled them out of their spur where they were left waiting, and then it will be going across to Notre Dame to pick up their empties and tie it all together and take it back to South Bend. Here's a good look here looking kind of north of Brother Andre Drive, what things looked like back in the 80s and early 90s. To the right here, we see what kind of remains of the South Bend to Niles line. This still went a little bit up north to serve the Big C Lumber, which is back in here. You can see at that time the toll road entrance ramp actually was elevated with the bridge. That is all now flat since the bridge is no longer needed with all the track gone. To the left here we see the St. Mary's spur that looped around and did its big loop back to the power plant area back there. Little different view of the same location, this time showing St. Mary's Switch, where you see the spur off to the left and looking straight ahead up toward Niles. This was a Tom Burke photo from about 1991. Next up here is a view of the Conrail local, again pulling empties out of St. Mary's. This was shot in 1990, and this is part of the Notre Dame Coal Train Part 1 video, which is on this channel. So if you want to see actual video of this area being operated by Conrail, be sure to check it out there if you haven't already, or watch it again. It's pretty good historical watching. This just shows how much this area has changed. Again, here's what remained of the crossing on Brother Andre Drive, our old continuation of Douglas Road. The area now taken up by the Hilton Garden Inn, and that's the only track that remained here, and now I believe it's even been paved over, so you can't even see the rails anymore, but it's still there. Again, same location. We had to bring a Strombeck photo in here from 1974, back when the area was almost just like an open country scene. This was a train that was coming south out of Niles, and the new tractors that you see on flat cars, those came out of the Clark Equipment Company in Benton Harbor, Michigan. They utilized the Benton secondary that ran down into Niles, and then we're coming through the South Bend secondary to get to South Bend. Now let's get back to our St. Mary's Railroad, which is really what this video is supposed to be about. This is another Tom Burke photo taken off of the St. Mary's Locomotive and looking towards the power plant. Here we see that power plant from the other direction. You see the overhead conveyor system for loading coal. You can see the locomotive down there in the distance. And this would have been the one of the tracks. Over to the right somewhere is where the other track would have been located. Here's a good overview shot of that power plant area. This area here is where we were just looking with the locomotives, with the track running right in here. And so the other track would have been somewhere in this area, and there would have been somewhat of a coal pile there, but that's all been cleaned up now. Here's a kind of poor picture of the St. Mary's Locomotive. This was the older paint scheme. I don't know why it turned out so smoky looking, but behind a tree here, if you look real close, you can kind of see a little bit of the Roadrunner cartoon character that they had on both sides. We'll see a little bit more of that later. Here's a little bit better look at that Roadrunner cartoon character on the other side. This was another Tom Burke photo here, and this time the locomotive was coupled onto one of the Notre Dame and Western hopper cars, probably used to shuttle coal from their coal pile to the power plant. Now we get a real good picture. This looks like freshly painted. They must have did a repaint of the locomotive. This doesn't have the Roadrunner on it anymore, but it now has St. Mary's Railroad in place of the number 1. Another Tom Burke photo, pretty much same shot as I took, but later. Here's another good shot, this one courtesy of Dennis Schmidt, and this is from monon.org website. Very good look at the locomotive and paint scheme. Here's another view, another Dennis Schmidt photograph from Monon, taking a good look at the locomotive. Tom Burke again, locomotive and power plant. And then finally, we see where the locomotive ended up. Kind of a neat shot here. Alden Depot Park and Museum, which is where it's at now. You can see the locomotive there in the corner. Kind of neat. You know, I know a lot of people probably aren't happy that it didn't end up somewhere here local, like say the New York Central Museum in Elkhart. But the important thing is it wasn't scrapped, as some of the rumors said that it was. So it at least did find a home, so it's kind of neat in that respect. And here's a good look at the locomotive again at its new home. This was courtesy of Ed Gross. We thank Ed for that. This was taken in 2008 at their museum. And so that does it for this. If you want more information and history, check out the monon.org website for more pictures, not only of the Notre Dame and Western and St. Mary's, but a lot of other shots just from the South Bend, Mishawaka area, if you're into those historical railroad shots. And also check out the aldendepot.com for the new home of the St. Mary's locomotive. So I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you down the road here again with some more local history videos. Thanks for watching.